Welcome to Raising Daughters, the podcast that helps parents learn the best ways to support their daughters as they navigate the high levels of stress, anxiety, pressure, and uncertainty so pervasive in our culture today. Dr. Tim Jordan is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician who has specialized in counseling girls for over 30 years and sheds light on the realities of today's young women in all facets of their lives. This is your opportunity to learn how to better support your daughters, making them feel safe, secure, and truly loved in the midst of life's ups and downs. Here is your host, Dr. Tim.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Raising Daughters. And you may notice that I'm wearing, it's kind of hard to tell because of the camera. I'm wearing a t-shirt today. How can you see it? There it says. It says Camp Weelakai, established in 1991. And my wife, Ann, is not here right now because she'd be mad at me for wearing this t-shirt for my podcast. But I wore it because at our summer camps and our weekend retreats, we work with the girls a lot on learning skills to resolving conflicts peacefully. That's not the only thing we do, but it's a big piece, and it's an important piece. And the same thing goes for when we go to schools with our Strong Girls, Strong World school program, teaching kids to resolve conflicts peacefully. So I thought today for my podcast, I would give you a review of how I look at resolving conflicts, how you can teach that skill to your children in the home so that when they go out into the world of school and maybe dating partners someday or marriage partners someday, that they'll have some good skills to take good care of themselves. I remember a long time ago, I saw a talk by Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but also the author of another book called The 8th Habit. And the 8th Habit was all about win-win negotiation. And one of the things I learned from that was about how to teach kids about that process, and mostly about adults, but also for kids. And so I created an exercise that I do oftentimes at retreats, camps, and also in my school program. We'll have everybody pair off in the class, and I'll demonstrate with one volunteer in the middle. And I have us sit or lay down on the ground, and we put our arms up like this, and we lock hands. I guess I can't show it very well. I lock hands, and then I tell them, we're going to see who can win the most M&Ms in 1 minute. Every time you can get your partner's hand to touch the ground, you win an M&M. Every time they get your hand to touch the ground, they win an M&M. We'll see who can win the most M&Ms. That's all I say. Then I have them all set up. I say, ready, set, go. And then I watch as these kids struggle and they're grunting and they're laughing. They're having fun. And then once the time is up, I'll say, stop, stay with your partner. Then we go around and I will ask, how many M&Ms did each person win? And in general, there's probably two main things that happen. In a lot of pairs, it's like 15-0 or 17-0 or 20-0. It's because one person just overpowered the other one. There's some groups, some pairs where it's 0-0. Or it might be 1-1. And then we'll ask them how they felt to do it that way. And how did it feel to be the kind of person who didn't get any? And then we'll stop and ask the question, what do you think prevented each and every one of you in this class, in this camp, in this group from winning 30 M&Ms? And they're like, what? And they give us this bewildered look. But occasionally one of the kids will come up with the idea of, well, what if we had done it this way? So they're like doing this locked in hands thing. What if we just let the other person win? If we both let each other win? So that our hands would go back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. We could have each earned at least 30 M&Ms in that amount of time. And they all go, oh. And then we'll ask, why do you think you didn't do that? And the answer is always, because we thought it was a competition. You said we were going to arm wrestle. And I always say, I never say we're going to arm wrestle. I just set you up. You assumed I meant that. And I'll ask questions to the class or the group. How many of you feel like there's a lot of competition, sometimes too much competition in your group, in your class? And almost always, all the hands go up. It's a win-lose class. And so we talk about what would it feel like if you could develop a more of a 30-30 class where everybody won 30 M&Ms. And if you were going to have a 30-30 class, what would it look like? They make a list of things like people would be kind, they would be respectful, they'd look out for each other, they would advocate for each other. People would be respectful, no teasing, they would include everybody, a whole list of things of that sort. Then the class will talk about how can we create that. But that's that win-win mentality, to getting out of the competition, beating other people, being the best kind of mindset, which oftentimes, usually takes away from the spirit of the class. So what I want kids to know is that they can raise the ante. they can start being just as concerned about their partners and their classmates being successful as they are about themselves being successful. I don't say don't be successful yourself. What I say, though, is you can also be looking out for other people and try and raise them up by encouraging people, etc. And that also pertains to conflict resolution. If you're having a conflict with someone in your class, in our camp, whatever, in life, with your sibling, with your parents, it's good if you come to the table with that mindset of, I'm going to be just as concerned about my adversaries' needs and what they need as I am of mine. I want to make sure that they win too. Now, in order for you to develop that kind of mindset, it does take a certain level of maturity, because you have to be willing to look out for the other person. You have to be very empathetic. You have to be interested in their needs and them winning as well. You have to put the relationship ahead of winning and being right, which is not always easy. I think the culture trains our kids to do the opposite. Our culture today is all about you, me, being the best team, best college, straight A's, blah, blah, blah. It's a very competitive culture, and all competition is not wrong or bad. It's just that I think we overdo it a lot. So the idea for kids is, when they're talking to each other, is, would you be willing to look for a solution that neither of us came with, that would be a third solution that would put together both of our needs, so that when we walked away from this conflict resolution time, we both would be saying, that works for me. It's not 100% what I came in here looking for, but it works. It's good enough. And if I can come away with that win and my partner walks away the same way, that's the kind of feeling we want to create in our relationship. It'll cause us to be closer. It'll cause us to feel closer, if you will. And again, that takes a level of maturity and a kind of a different kind of mindset. I also talk to kids about the importance of keeping their power, that one way to avoid these conflicts is not to get triggered by people, not to get triggered by people's words, not to get triggered by hearing a rumor about somebody talking about you and believing it, and then creating a whole bunch of drama around that. They can learn to not let words and rumors get to them and trigger them into creating more and more drama. I talked about keeping your power in a previous podcast, and I will try and remember to put that link on my show notes. As always, go to my website, www.drtimjordan.com. You may be listening through that website, but if you're not, when you go home from driving or walking, then you can check it out and get I'll have several links for previous podcasts once we're done here today. Another interesting concept that I heard about, and I teach kids, is I ask them how they feel if I pulled out my wallet and I counted out $86,400 and handed it to them scot-free. I don't need anything in return. I just want to gift you with $86,400. And most kids say, that'd be great. That's awesome. I'd love that kind of money. And I would say, great. What if you go home with that money today and your little brother sneaks into your room and steals $10 of that money and doesn't tell you? How would you feel? Well, I'd be disrespected. I wouldn't like it. He's always doing things like that. But I'd have $86,390 left. So it's not that big of a deal. I don't need to get all bent out of shape. It's not that much. So the metaphor here is that there are 86,400 seconds in every day. And are you willing to let someone's teasing words or their disrespectful words, their 10 seconds of that, cause you to have ruined your whole day? The other 86,390 seconds in your day. It may not be worth it. It might be more valuable to just let it go. It's not that important. I don't want to give my power away. I don't want to allow them to control my mood and my happiness. So I don't like what they did, but it's not worth it. I'm not willing to do that. So sometimes you can avoid conflicts by just telling yourself it's not that important. I'm not going to let it be important. I can shrug it off. It's like they're disrespectful, whatever, and walk away. And you haven't given away your power. And you've avoided a blow up or some drama. The other thing is, I saw this quote somewhere a long time ago, and I can't remember where I saw it, but something to the effect of, you would never need to forgive people if you never condemned them. I think that works into this discussion of resolving conflicts, because oftentimes with conflicts, there becomes people with bad feelings about each other, people doing hurtful things, saying hurtful things. And we talk about forgiveness. I did a podcast about that a while back, how important it is to do that for people so they can let go of feelings and all. But you would never need to go through all that if you never condemn them. If you learned how, whether with the 86,400 seconds metaphor, if you learn to not let those things get into your skin, if you didn't condemn people and their actions, you'd never need to forgive. In our camps, we have a whole process that we teach kids. Same thing with our Strong Girls, Strong World school program. Steps to resolving conflicts. And actually, we changed the name a couple of years ago. Some kids in one of the schools we were working at didn't like that name. So they like the name better, Courageous Conversations. So that's what we've been calling them, Courageous Conversations, because it does take courage to call someone out and say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I'm going to briefly go through these steps. I'm also going to, it'll be in my show notes. You can look for these steps once you get home. So these are steps to resolving conflicts. First thing we always encourage kids to do is to ask permission of the other person, which might be their sibling, which might be their friend. It might be you, mom or dad. To say, I have something really important I want to handle with you. Is this a good time? Because sometimes kids aren't ready to have a quiet, calm conversation. They're too angry. They're still too worked up in that moment. So it's okay for the other person to say, you know what, I need to go calm down. I'm too mad right now. How about we do that, in an hour? Your kids may come up to you as you walk in the door from work and say, I need to resolve this. I'm upset about something. And you're just not in the space to calmly listen. So it's okay to say, can you give me an hour? I need to go take a quick walk. I need to kind of let go of my day of work. I want to hear you. I know it's important. And since I want to really be there for you, I need a few minutes to kind of get my act together, basically. So it's okay to ask permission. It's okay to say no and to put it off for a little while, but make sure you come back and do it when you said you're going to do it. The other thing we teach kids as a second step is to affirm the friendship, to say to them, this is why I want to do this. I've been feeling distant from you lately. It seems like we haven't been talking as much. It seems like, we used to be best friends and lately we've been hanging out with different people. I don't know. I feel like we've been avoiding each other and I don't like it. I miss our friendship. I miss spending time with you. That's why I want to handle this conflict. So in some words, kind of sort of like that, they can let the other person know, this is why I'm inviting you to the table. This is why I'm inviting you to talk to me about what's going on. And usually that perks up the other person's ears. Like they may care about that person as well. And so you kind of start the conversation in that kind of a way. And then we talk about the old I statements. That's the next part. So you don't want to say, you're always saying this, you're always doing this, because that usually makes the other person defensive and less likely to listen and listen in a way that you want them to listen. So it's much more effective to say, I've been feeling really hurt when blank, and what I want is blank. I've been feeling really disconnected from you in the last few months, and I feel like it started with our arguing at recess. And what I want is for us to patch it up. I want to get back to where we were. The other person's job then is to mirror, and we teach kids how to mirror. We have a couple of sentence stems. So what I heard you say is that you feel like we've been kind of distant lately. We've been avoiding each other because of an argument we had at recess, and you want us to kind of get back together. Is that what I hear you saying? And the first person can say yes or no. Sometimes if they've heard it, fine. Sometimes they've heard a part of it, but they missed an important part. So it's okay for that first person to say, well, you missed this part, and then to repeat it. I always teach kids to give, like a paragraph of information, not a book. Because if they go on and on for 5 minutes, the other person's like, they zone out, they forget half of it. Same way with their parents. Give each other just a paragraph to allow the other person to be able to stop and say, wait, let me make sure I got that so far. What I hear you saying is that blah, 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 blah. Did I get that right? If they say, yes, you got it, then I would say, tell me more about that. Because there's usually several layers to what's going on. So then you listen some more, then you mirror that back, and then you say, okay, did I get you right? Okay, tell me more. What else? I don't understand. Tell me more about that. You're not allowed at that point, if you're the listener, to ask questions or to give advice. You're just trying to get in their shoes and see it from their point of view. You're just listening. That sounds so easy, but I know a lot of you who are listening to this podcast, I think a lot of you would say sometimes it's hard to do that because you have things to say. You have advice to give. You want your kids to see things from a different point of view. They're giving you quote unquote wrong information, but that's less important in this moment from just hearing them, hearing how they're seeing it, getting in their shoes and seeing it from their point of view. So you keep listening and mirroring until they feel like you got it. And then what I usually do when I'm working with kids at camp or retreats or in our school program is I'll ask one further question of the person who started sharing. And the question I would ask them is, why do you think that bothered you so much? And this is where it can get really interesting. This is where you unpeel the onion skin a little bit. For instance, we were working at a school a bunch of probably 10, 12 years ago. And we have a circle in the classroom. And we were teaching the kids these steps. And then we always asked for a volunteer. Anybody want to work out a real conflict? Not a fake one, but a real one. And in doing this program, Strong Girl, Strong World, for probably 25 plus years, we've never had a volunteer. We've never not had a volunteer, is what I want to say. Sometimes they look around like, is this okay? And we remind them, nobody's in trouble. We just want, this is a good way to practice this. And so for all of you watching, you can learn these steps too. So someone will volunteer. We ask them to ask permission. The other person says yes. They come into the middle of the circle. Then they start the process. So anyway, this happened at the school a dozen years ago. And this one girl said, I've been upset with you because on the first day of school, we were lining up to do something. And you kind of butted in front of me and didn't even say anything. It really hurt my feelings. So the other girl mirrored. So it sounds like what you're saying is that on the first day of school, I butted in front of you when we were getting our books or something, and that really bothered you. Did I hear you right? Yes, that's right. Okay, tell me more about that. So to make a long story short, what this girl ended up saying to her friend was this she was new to the class. This was the first day of school, first week, first day of school. And she had changed schools. She was in, I believe it was fourth grade. I think this was a fourth grade class. She changed schools because at her previous school, she'd been bullied a lot, left out, teased, made fun of. The parents called, they tried all these things and they didn't stop. And so they were like, she needs a fresh start. So they changed to this new school. Now here we are on the very first day. Somebody butts in line and this girl went right to, here we go again. Now, I don't think it necessarily meant that, but that's the way she took it. So it made sense, right? So as this other girl was mirroring her back, she also could see, okay, that makes sense now why that bothered you so much, because you're feeling like you were wanting a different start, a new start, hoping that you could make friends. And then when I did that, you felt like I was being mean to you. That makes sense. I get it. So once that process happens and the person feels heard, then we say, does the other person who is listening, do you want to let them know how you feel about what went on? Not a step-by-step rebuttal of everything that person said, but more like, tell us your point of view. How are you seeing it? And so then the other person has a chance to do that. And then that first person who gave the information, they mirror. They mirror and mirror and mirror until that person feels like they've been heard. And once you get to that point, then you say to them, so now that you know how each other is feeling, how can you work this out in a way that works for both of you? How can you create a win-win? So for instance, with those two girls I talked about, the win-win for them was the one girl apologized. She said, I didn't do it on purpose. It was not my intention to be mean or anything, but I understand why. And so you can count on me to be more respectful and to be more sensitive. And then the original person who sent the message she made a commitment to the girl that if something happens again, instead of sitting on it for 2 months, she'll go right to her and work it out and then move on. Because what happens for girls a lot is they hold on to it. They're so afraid of confronting people. They're so afraid of making the other person mad. They're so afraid of losing that friend. I talked about this in a recent podcast about tend and befriend, a reaction that girls and women have. So I'll put that link also in the show notes. They're so worried about losing that friend or a whole group of friends that they will avoid direct confrontation. They'll avoid handling the conflict directly because of all those fears. But the feelings don't go away. Sometimes one girl will say, oh, sorry about that. And the one girl will say, oh, no big deal. I don't care, whatever. But it is a big deal. And there's still feelings left over that are still there, and then they fester. And because she's avoiding that other girl because she's upset with her, the other girl senses, oh, that girl doesn't want to be friends with me, so she avoids her. Then this little drama plays out under the surface, or sometimes above the surface, all because of a misunderstanding. When we've worked with schools, a lot of times girls are not talking about necessarily what happened last week or this afternoon. They often talk about things that may have happened 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. They've never let go of. It's been causing these kids to not be friends, to avoid each other, maybe talking bad about her to other people, which creates more drama, all because of misunderstanding that they could have handled quickly and efficiently. So we need to give girls permission to do that. It's not being mean. It's not being aggressive when you go up and confront someone. You're not screaming at them. You're asking them to sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation. I remember one time years ago, we were in another state. We were doing a day-long little retreat with a class of, I believe it was 8th grade girls. And we asked anybody have a conflict they'd like to solve within the group. And one girl said, I do. I have something I want to handle. So she actually had a conflict with 3 other girls. So they sat there, but we said, we only want one of you to talk, so it's not like you're being ganged up on. So this girl proceeded to tell those three girls how she had felt left out this school year. She felt like they had been avoiding her and that they had all been best friends, and that it really hurt her that she was missing her friends a lot. So one of the girls mirrored her back, and that took a couple different back and forth mirroring. And we talked about, when did it happen? And she said it started actually at the beginning of the school year. And to make a long story short, this is the gist of the story. That girl who had initially shared, she had been picked to move up and play with the freshman volleyball team, which is a big thing at this school. And so she was making some friends with the upper class women, with a lot of freshmen who were in the class, which was fine. But the other three girls who were on the volleyball team previously with the middle school team, they felt like, oh my gosh, she thinks she's so cool now. She's hanging out with the other upperclassmen. She's got these friends who are freshmen. She's too cool for us. And because that girl had been spending more time with those people because of being on a different team, she wasn't ignoring her old three friends. She just didn't have as much time as she did. And because they were feeling that way, they started to, give her those little eye-rolling kind of looks. They were kind of avoiding her. So she interpreted that as, oh my gosh, I guess they don't want to be my friend anymore. So she had sort of started to avoid them. And then, the drama unfolded, and now here's where they're at. And then we asked the girls, why do you think it bothered you all so much that she was on that upper team? And they each had stories about having older siblings who were the star athletes in the house, and how they'd always felt less than, never good enough, and like they weren't getting enough or as much attention as their superstar sister. So that's why they were sensitive to that girl moving up to the higher team, and that they, that's why their jealousies kind of emerged. So they talked it through. They made some commitments about being friends again, finding time for each other. If they had something that was going on, they were going to talk to each other instead of letting it. This had festered for like 3 or 4 months. And then they hugged, and then they moved out of the circle. So I would give your kids the skills to be able to do that. You can start with conflicts with you. You can start with helping them learn how to handle conflicts with their siblings the same kind of way. You can give them these skills at home when they're fighting. When brothers and sisters or sisters and sisters are fighting at home, I would get out of the role of being the lawyer, police officer, coming in there, the judge, deciding who started this, who's right, who's wrong, who's going to be punished, who's going to jail, if you will. Instead, walk into that conflict scene with the intention of, my job here is not to figure it out. I don't care who started it. This is your relationship, not mine. My only job here as your mom or dad is to teach you the skills of how to solve these kinds of conflicts without needing me or another adult. I need to teach you how to face each other, listen to each other, mirror, do like those steps for conflict resolution, if you will, and come to a solution that works for both of you, because it's not my job to figure that out for you. I do need to teach you those skills. Otherwise, how would you know? But once you do that several times, it doesn't take like 20 years. It just takes a few times. We teach this to our kids at camp, kids and teens at camp, and it doesn't take very long for them to learn how to do it. And they love doing it because at the end, it's like a huge weight is lifted. I've been holding on to these feelings and this anger or frustration or whatever for 6 months or 2 years or 4 years or whatever. It feels so freeing to let that go and to come up with a solution that works for both of us. I ask kids oftentimes, and adults, I used to do I used to do more team building things for school staffs and businesses and things, but I would do an exercise that I learned from Stephen Covey when I went to his conference. So I'll call up a volunteer, and I would stand in the middle of the room and do that arm wrestling thing, quote unquote. I'd say, let's just sit down, put your elbow up, grab my wrist, and every time I can get your hand to touch the table, I'll give you $1. And if you get mine to touch the table, then you win $1. We'll see who can win the most dollars. Everybody in the audience is kind of laughing. And then I start to pump it up. I'll be like, by the way, I know I'm not that big, but you'd be surprised. I've been doing this for a long time. I have won tournaments, arm wrestling tournaments. I'm a middle-aged man, and you may think, oh, this old guy, whatever. But you know what? I think you're going to be surprised. I'm going to kick your butt. And then, the other person's now they're ready, right? They're ready to show me. We put our hands together, and I'll say, and we're kind of locked. It's really tight. I'll say, ready, set, go. And then as soon as they push, I let go. I let them win. We go back up. Let's do it again. Sorry. Ready, set, go. I let them win. And I do that 2 or 3 or 4 times. The other person starts, at first they're like, what's going on? But then they start to understand, oh, wow, this is different. And then they stop pushing. I've never had someone not stop pushing. I'll ask them, why are you not doing that? And they're like, it's not fun. It's like the fun is in the resistance. The fun is in the power struggle, right? You get a tremendous sense of power from going back and forth and resisting people and all that. And it's not as much fun when someone says, I'm not willing to play that game. So what that person is saying to that person, what I would say to them is, this is about our relationship more than it is about me winning. And I want both of us, if you're willing, to have a mindset that says, we're not going to walk away from this table unless both of us feel like we win. Because if we can't come to that, then it's a no-win or it's a win-lose, then I think we need to stop right now. I want us to both come with the intention of we can figure this out. It may take a few minutes. It's okay. What we need to do is get in each other's shoes, rely on our empathy to hear each other's needs, understand them at a deeper level. And when you do that, you're much more motivated to create a win-win. You're much more motivated to create a win-win. That's what you do. I ask them, how many people does it take when there's a fight or an argument? How many people does it take to be in a win-win mentality to create a win-win solution? And almost everybody says, well, it takes both people. And I say, no, it doesn't. It just takes one of you to come to the table with a level of maturity, empathy, compassion, to be able to say, I want us to do this different. And then with your empathy and your compassion, you can win them over. You win their trust that we're going to do it different this time. And we really can walk away with a different kind of solution. That's so powerful. That's so powerful of a lesson for kids. So I will put the steps for conflict resolution in the show notes so you can check those out and use those with your kids. Use it with sibling rivalry. Use it if you have a conflict with them yourself. Practice, model, be patient. Even adults usually are not used to mirroring like that. We're so used to just interrupting and jumping in and saying, that's not true. Why don't you just do this? And that is illegal, right? I have girls and their parents, like with a dad or a mom in the office, and they're going through these conflicts. I will stop them and say, time out. That's against the rules. You cannot add to it right now. You just listen. And 9 times out of 10, it's the parents who are not listening. The kids pick up on this even quicker in my experience. I want to leave you with some quotes. And these will also be in the show notes. If you want to copy one, put on a little index card, stick it on your computer to remind yourself of the importance of win-win conflict resolution, making sure the other person wins as much as you do, caring about them enough, caring about the relationship more than being right. Ooh, that's a tough one to swallow sometimes. So a couple of quotes to end us here. One of them is that no matter how much dirt you throw at someone else, you will always be dirtier. An eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. That's from Gandhi. Resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. That's from Malachi McCourt. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow said, my enemy is someone whose stories I do not know. Abraham Lincoln said, do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? Oh, love that one. Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? It's kind of a heavy, deep one, isn't it? When you hold resentment towards another, you are bound to that person or condition by an emotional link that is stronger than steel. Forgiveness is the only way to dissolve that link and go free. That's from Catherine Ponder. Martin Luther King had a quote too. I thought I had this on here, but I don't see it right now. Where he also talked about, oh, here it is. I got it. People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. I think that holds true for resolving conflicts peacefully. Oftentimes we don't take the time to get to know the person, get to know them and their needs, what's important to them, why things are bothering them so much. When you have a class that becomes a 30-30 class who really cares about each other, they don't use the information they hear about each other to hurt each other. They use it to be more sensitive to each other. And that creates a whole different kind of feel in a classroom or a group of my campers or in a business or in an office setting or wherever. That kind of care and commitment to each other's in your relationships. One final quote, and this is from Israel Moore Ayivor, and that name you can find in the show notes. But it's a great quote. One word can end a fight. One hug can start a friendship. One smile can bring unity. One person can change your entire life. And I added to this, one girl can change the world. And I think when you learn to resolve conflicts, when you learn to have courageous conversations and you handle things that way, you can change your relationship. You can change your relationship. You can change your family. You can change a classroom. You can change a camp, like Camp Wheelakai for girls. You can change any community when you come to each other with that kind of commitment. So learn to resolve your conflicts. Learn to have courageous conversations with each other in a way that builds closeness, builds completion for whatever the issue was, and builds deeper understanding of each other. I'll be back here with a brand new podcast in a week. You might want to listen to this podcast with your daughter or son, for that matter, and talk about how you can resolve conflicts together. Show them those steps for resolving conflicts so each of you can start learning to practice. Help them solve their problems with each other. I'm talking about brothers and sisters and siblings. That's the template that they will take out into the world with friends, dating partners, marriage partners someday, perhaps. Take care. I'll be back here another week. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Raising Daughters. Hopefully you've learned something useful about girls and young women and how to help them navigate the pressures, challenges, and opportunities of modern life. If you want to become a more effective parent, keep listening to the show at drtimjordan.com and let the conversations shape you. Build that one-of-a-kind connection with your daughters in the most profound and meaningful ways possible, shaping them into strong, confident women of the future. That's all for now. See you next week for another episode of Raising Daughters.